Welcome to the meeting of the Backbench Business Committee. And for those that are watching us online or on their TV screens, we've been delayed because of divisions in the main chamber. So apologies for if you've been waiting with bated breath to hear these applications. The first application up we have is from Mike Martin, MP, on seizing frozen Russian assets to fund Ukraine. Over to you, Mike.
Thank you, Chair. And I'd like to introduce, or I'd rather ask my colleagues to introduce themselves.
Tim Rocker, Labour member for Macclesfield.
Julian Lewis, Conservative member for New Forest East.
Michael Payne, Labour MP for Gedling.
Thank you.
Welcome.
So as you know, Chair, currently British government policy is that the interest on frozen Russian assets is used to fund the war effort in Ukraine. And there is a further argument which we would like to explore with this debate, which is the seizing of the assets themselves to fund the war in Ukraine. So the principle rather than just the interest. And this amounts to some $300 billion across the G7. So it's quite a sizable amount of money, which has a very serious chance of changing the course of the war in Ukraine. So that's the headline, and I would go into a little bit of the context around the war in Ukraine, if I may. As you know, we're at a critical turning point in the war. We have a very rapidly shifting geopolitical environment with President-elect Trump and some of his previous comments around both support for Ukraine and also support for NATO. As you will know, it's predominantly the NATO alliance which is supporting Ukraine in this war against Russia. And hitherto, the United States has provided approximately 50% of the funding that the Western alliance has given to Ukraine in order to combat this illegal Russian aggression. And if American support diminishes or is otherwise taken away, Ukraine would be in a very serious spot. And obviously for Europeans, and I use that term in the geographic sense, of course the UK is part of Europe and certainly part of NATO, that is nothing short of catastrophic for us. And so whilst we recognise, as all the co-signatories of this, that seizing the assets is not without issues, there are ways to do it. Czechia and Estonia have actually done this and seized assets and used it for funding the war in Ukraine. And what we would like to do is have a debate to explore it, and the motion itself calls on the government to explore with allies how the UK, with allies, might go about seizing all of those assets, some 300 billion, within the G7.
Lovely. Anything to add from your colleague?
Yes, well, I think that Mike has made the, as it were, the right of centre argument. So just for perversity, I'll make the left of centre argument, which is to say that there are other aspects to this as well. Because what is all this dirty Russian money doing in the cities and chancelleries of supposedly democratic Western countries? It will be absolutely fascinating to see the arguments that are put against this. If we want to actually insulate ourselves from being infected with dirty money of this sort, this is a good way. It's probably the best possible paradigm case you could bring. And given the topicality, and as Mike, being more serious now, has rightly emphasized the crucial significance of Russia not seeming to emerge from this conflict rewarded for its aggression, I would have thought, particularly if it's in the main chamber, that there is a good chance of the media, if properly prepared, being interested in covering this debate.
I would simply reinforce the points that Mike and Julian have made and just add that it was clear that there's cross-party support from the backbenches for this, which I think is really important. It's obviously very topical, as Julian has pointed out, and because of the incoming administration and some of the comments made by figures who are likely to form part of that administration, there is an urgency if this action was to be contemplated by NATO allies and the UK itself. So I think it's quite a timely application.
Nothing further to add, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. The one thing that I just want to check, so your application is for a chamber debate and you've got a motion, substantive motion, which is divisible. The first slot we can offer you is Thursday the 9th of January, when it would be the first slot after any statements or urgent questions, etc. Would you be able to take that slot?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so.
Yes.
Yeah? Okay, fine.
Yes.
Yep.
Right. Any questions from other colleagues?
More of a
Yeah, go on.
comment than a question. In recent backbench business debates, what we have seen is lots of members cross-party being incredibly supportive of the application and then not actually showing up to the backbench business debate. And as a committee, we're really keen to see these debates. You've definitely demonstrated that there is lots of interest across party. You've got 25 names, which is brilliant. I would just ask that you would communicate with those that have shown an interest as well as further MPs so that we have as robust a debate as possible on that day.
Absolutely. And can I ask, will it be morning or afternoon, or do we know on the 9th?
Well, obviously the House sits on a Thursday at 9:30. There's oral questions till 10:30. If there's no UQs, then business questions, any statements. So it could come on as early as 12:30. Unlikely, I have to say, but it could do, or it may be much later.
Brilliant.
And then the one thing I would say is that obviously the Speaker or Deputy Speakers will apportion the time, because we have two debates. They'll apportion the time between the two debates, depending on the number of speakers that have put into the Speaker in order to speak. And as Jess was saying, we are monitoring those that sign applications and those that turn up and actually speak. So it is important that people, if they put in and support an application, they do turn up. Because we don't want criticism from the Leader of the House saying we're not using our time effectively. And when we're finishing at 4:30 in the afternoon in the main chamber during government time, I don't want backbench business time to be similarly criticised.
Understood, Mr. Chair.
Anyway, if that's okay, thank you very much. The Clerks will be in touch and we'll try and schedule the debate for you.
Got one going on about this.
Okay, next up is Martin Wrigley. Martin.
Pretty much the same thing.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Feels slightly difficult to follow such a compelling argument, I think, but there we go.
Over to you.
Thank you.
Sorry, your application is on South West Railway Services.
Absolutely. So all through the southwest we are facing difficulty with our train services. And one of the big things that's coming up is 6 years of potential delay due to current plans for the area called Old Oak Common. Old Oak Common was the terminus of HS2 for the north coming into London, which will now be going by tunnel through to Euston. Current plans indicate that not only will we have 7 years of disruption whilst this 14-platform station is built, we will have permanent disruption on all the trains from the southwest, with every train stopping from between 5 to 15 minutes. The scheme is offering nothing at all to the residents of the southwest, and I have support of pretty much all of the MPs along the line down through Bristol, Swindon, down to Cornwall, Somerset, and Devon. We're looking to see what can be brought forward to actually provide mitigation, if you like, for those in the southwest, certainly to emphasise the need to finish the Dawlish Rail Resilience Programme. You remember the Dawlish Rail line hanging over the sea. I declare an interest. It's my town. I was Mayor of Dawlish just after that happened. But that programme has not yet been completed. The final phase, securing the cliffs, has yet to be done. So we could see another blockage there. At the moment, there are little plans to show what the residents in the southwest can see in terms of advantage from the work coming in that will disrupt them with HS2. So we're looking to try to establish the most important things to the area and to air the issues around the problems with the railway going down into the southwest.
Okay, thank you. You may or may not know that we've allocated a debate for next Tuesday in Westminster Hall on the impact of Old Oak Common on rail services to the Western Wales.
I did not know that, and we have something tomorrow as well.
We've got Max Wilkinson has submitted that request and it's been granted. So that debate's taking place next Tuesday already. That doesn't mean to say you can't have a debate on the effect in the southwest, but I'm just gently saying there's one already going on. So you've applied for a Tuesday morning, and because of that, I presume Transport would be answering this.
Yes.
Yeah. So it has to be the week when Transport are answering in Westminster Hall. So it's your application. So if we agree it, it'll go on the waiting list because we don't know yet when Transport will next be answering.
Okay.
Okay.
No.
Any other questions, colleagues?
Well, I was also going to add, Chair, just briefly searching through the backbench names who signed your piece here. Many of the same names came up for the other debate that you mentioned, Chair, as well. So I think you'll probably have entirely the same people come and speak at both debates, to be honest. But yeah,
I think that's likely true, but this is causing great consternation across all of our residents, and trying to demonstrate that we are considering their needs and balancing their needs with the needs of terminating HS2, I think is important for fairness.
Yeah. Okay. Well, any other questions from colleagues? No? Okay, thank you. Well, the clerks will be in touch.
Thank you very much.
No business. So Dawn Butler, you're next up, and your application is for pay gaps in the workplace.
Thank you, Chair and the committee. I mean, very simply, what I would like to have is a debate on the floor of the House in regards to the multiple pay gaps in the workplace. We already discussed gender pay gap, but there's an ethnicity pay gap and a disability pay gap. And the gender pay gap this year fell 2 days earlier than previously. That means that the pay gap is getting worse. And on the current rate of progress, it will take about 40 years to close these gaps. And I think it will surprise people. So as a forward-thinking Parliament, I feel that it will be very progressive for us to have a debate on the pay gaps.
Okay. Well, thank you. Your application is for a Tuesday in Westminster Hall. We can offer you the first week back after the Christmas recess, which will be on the 7th of January at 9:30 in Westminster Hall, because we're assuming, taking the view that women equalities would be the answering department. Could you take that if it's offered?
7th of
January.
Oh yeah, Women in Parliament. Yep, that'll be a great day.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
All I was going to say, just Chair, it's not really a question, more of a statement. I would just, having just done a Westminster Hall debate, I would just manage the expectations of all the people on your list that they're probably not all going to get to speak in that debate, realistically. Because obviously you've got a lot of Labour names, but obviously it will have to, Bob's, doesn't it?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I would just manage the expectations.
Maybe we should have it in the main chamber instead.
Well, the only problem with the main chamber debate, which I wouldn't be against, but the only problem with the main chamber is you need more from the opposition. So that's the only thing I would say. I just think if you're going to do a Westminster Hall debate, which we'll discuss in a minute,
what I would say to you, Dawn, is that having a Westminster Hall debate doesn't preclude you coming back for maybe a chamber debate in the future with maybe a motion about what you want done after you've heard from the ministers of what they're proposing to do. So,
yeah, we could do that.
Any other questions? No?
Great.
Okay, thank you very much. The clerks will be in touch.
Thank you.
Okay, the final...
Two more.
Oh, two more, sorry, yes. Oh, yeah. God, I'm misreading that. Bambos, Cheryl Ambos, yes, please. And your application is on the UN International Day of Education. Turn over a page.
Thank you, Chairman. And this is an application for a debate on International Day of Education. The International Day of Education is actually on the 24th of January, which is not a sitting Friday, but we'd like it to be as close as possible to that, so the preference would be for the Thursday. Right. We do have cross-party support on this. The members who have signed it are either members who are on the APPG, or they're members from the International Development Committee, or they've had an interest, such as Helen Grant, who's been an education envoy in her role under the previous government, or members of the CPA. So those are the people that have signed the application, so they would have an interest in it. The reason this is important is that Obviously, education is of huge importance, particularly developing countries. SDG 4, which is the right to access primary education for all children and have positive outcomes, has to be met by 2030. So we want to monitor what progress is being made in relation to SDG 4 and also how effective the UK aid has been in achieving that. There's currently a review of ODA spending led by Baroness Munish Shafiq. So that's going to be based on the 5 Labour missions. So it's to see how effective the targeting of that money will be, particularly in relation to education. So we want to see what the government are doing and how effective they will be, because this is an area of change and something that we want to make sure we're on top of and happens. So that's really where we are, and I'm being proactive in actually seeking a date that's towards the end of January for obvious reasons, but I didn't want to miss the boat, so that's why the application has come in so early.
We encourage early applications, particularly when there's a date involved. The only thing I would say about the date, particularly if it's the Chamber, is also likely to coincide with the application for Holocaust Memorial Day, which I'm sure the committee would want to allocate to the Chamber, and it's likely to be a full day's debate, because it normally is, because so many people want to contribute. But I mean, the opportunity will be either for Westminster Hall, as you've applied, if you wanted that particular date, or you could have a potentially earlier debate, because obviously we're still taking applications for the Chamber for the 16th of January, as well as looking to the future. And we've got gaps in Westminster Hall after Christmas, right the way through.
I think Westminster Hall would be fine on that Thursday if that was a possibility, but I'll leave it in your hands. But I do appreciate that there are sensitivities. It was just to actually get the debate, and as close as possible to the day would be the preference.
Okay, lovely. And you have quite a substantial number of speakers, I think. So would you be able to fill a 3-hour session or just the 90-minute debate in Westminster Hall?
I think 3 hours would be a push, but we'll do our best. And
our point is that we'll allocate you the time.
Yeah.
If we get another application for that date, then you would only have the 90 minutes.
Understand.
I mean, I'm just looking at whether, given the number of speakers you've got that wish to participate.
There is an interest, and I'll get back to them and actually make sure that they do take part. And also, this is not just like people that have a development interest, it's also an opportunity that anyone has an interest in education. They can highlight things that are happening in their local areas as well.
Okay. Questions from other colleagues? Anything?
My only question would be who the answering department would be for.
It would probably be FCDO because of the development links, as it's linked to SDG 4. So, that they would be responding, I imagine.
Okay. For a Thursday, that won't matter. It's only the Tuesday that it matters. But that's fine. Okay, all right, thank you very much. We'll be in touch.
Thanks so much.
And finally, Helen Morgan, with an application for backlogs in the NHS.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chair. So I brought this application because we have a significant problem with backlogs across a range of different services in the NHS. So whether that's the 7.5 million people waiting for elective care, the significant deterioration in ambulance waiting times that we've seen over the last few weeks and months. We have backlogs in meeting cancer referral and treatment times, backlogs in scanning, and also backlogs in sort of slightly less well reported areas such as gynecology. So there's considerable interest from members across the House in having a debate on these topics, because with the absence of health-related legislation, we've been restricted really to oral questions to enable to discuss these issues with ministers. So I've got a reasonable number of potential participants from both sides of the House to consider contributing to this debate.
Okay, fine, thank you. Your application at the moment is for the Chamber. Would you accept a Westminster Hall debate if we offered it?
I would accept a Westminster Hall debate if you offered it, yes.
Because we would be in a position to offer you straight away the 19th of December. You could have the whole afternoon in Westminster Hall.
So that's fine in terms of my diary. I'm just concerned that I wouldn't be able to drag all those people here to speak in it, given that it's the final day before recess. And I would be concerned if you'd allocated some time and not enough people came to speak, you'd put their name down.
Yeah, okay. Questions, colleagues? No? Okay, thank you, Helen. We'll be in touch.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. Order. That ends the formal business of the committee.